The moon hung crimson and swollen above the ancient pine forests of Sierra Nevada. Its bloodied light cast long shadows across the stone courtyard of Shadow Moon Fortress, where a woman knelt alone before the assembled pack. Sarah Silverstone kept her head bowed, silver-streaked hair falling across her face like a veil. The scent of burnt magic and silver clung to her skin, punishment for defying pack law. Around her, the nobles of the Shadow Moon pack stood in rigid silence, waiting for their king to pass judgment. Through the corners of her downcast eyes, Sarah observed them. Warriors with shoulders thrown back in pride, elders whose gazes held centuries of memory, young wolves eager to witness punishment, and among them a solitary figure standing apart from the rest, an elderly man whose weathered face betrayed no emotion, though his eyes never left her. William Greyson, the old advisor, the keeper of histories. The man whose relevance had faded with each passing decade until he was little more than a living relic. Yet something in his gaze made Sarah shiver, recognition perhaps, or something deeper. Boots echoed against stone, commanding everyone's attention. The crowd parted like water around a stone as their alpha approached. Alexander Nightshade descended the obsidian steps with deliberate slowness, each footfall a heartbeat of silence. Power rippled from him in waves that made the air itself feel heavy. His presence was a storm wrapped in flesh, shoulders broad beneath his ceremonial cloak, eyes gleaming gold in the moonlight. Sarah Silverstone of the fallen bloodline, he announced, voice deep as thunder rolling over mountains. You stand accused of aiding our sworn enemies, the Bloodclaw insurgents. What say you before your king? Sarah lifted her face. Her lips were cracked, but her voice didn't waver. I saved a child, not a soldier. The words fell like stones in still water. If that's treason, then I accept my fate. A murmur rippled through the assembled wolves, outrage from some, surprise from others. The Alpha's expression didn't change, but his gaze sharpened. You defied our border decree, he said. The punishment is death. I know, she whispered. That's why I didn't run. Her quiet defiance struck him like a pulse of light through shadow. Most wolves begged when faced with him, pleaded, broke, but she knelt there, bloodied and barefooted, eyes blue as frost, refusing to flinch. Alexander circled her, slowly studying her with the cold calculation of a predator. The entire fortress seemed to hold its breath. When he stopped directly before her, his scent washed over her cedar smoke mountain stone. Do not move, Omega, he commanded, voice dropping to a whisper. Something in his tone, low, dangerous, compelling, froze her in place. The air between them seemed to thicken, to pulse with something ancient and unnameable. Then it happened. A spark of connection, electric and undeniable, jumping between them like lightning seeking ground. Sarah gasped as warmth bloomed at the base of her neck, spreading outward until her lungs ached. Alexander's hand shot out, fingers gripping her chin, forcing her gaze to his. Golden eyes met blue, and the world around them seemed to fade, walls, torches, whispers all drowned beneath the weight of that stare. Impossible, Alexander muttered, his composure cracking for the first time. In the shadowed corner of the courtyard, William Greyson straightened, recognition dawning on his aged face. For 50 years, he had served 3 generations of alphas, had witnessed the rise and fall of packs throughout the Sierra Nevada territories. He knew what that spark meant, had seen it only twice before in his long lifetime. The mate bond, the unbreakable connection, the blessing or curse of the moon goddess herself. But this was impossible. Not with her. Not with a traitor whose bloodline should have been wiped from existence decades ago. William pushed forward through the crowd, his movements betraying none of his 72 years. The nobles parted reluctantly, some sneering at the old wolf's presumption. His relevance had waned over the years, his counsel sought less and less by the young king who preferred action to history's lessons. But tonight, history itself stood before them, demanding to be acknowledged. My king, William said, his voice quiet, but carrying across the stone courtyard. May I approach? Alexander didn't look away from Sarah, his hand still gripping her chin. Speak, old friend. William moved closer, studying the woman with eyes that had seen too much. The mark at her throat, it bears the crescent of the bond. I can see that, Alexander snapped, finally releasing Sarah. She swayed slightly, but remained kneeling. The old advisor knelt beside her, his knees protesting the cold stone. With gentle fingers, he brushed her hair back from her neck, revealing the faint crescent mark, beginning to glow silver beneath her skin. Then he looked up at his king voice, dropping so only Alexander could hear. She bears another mark as well, my lord. One that should not exist. His weathered finger traced another fainter pattern beneath her collarbone, a small spiral within a circle. The sigil of the Silverstone bloodline. Alexander's breath caught. The Silverstones were destroyed. Every last one. So we believed. William's eyes held ancient wisdom and fresh concern. Until now. The Alpha King straightened, addressing the assembled pack with renewed authority. Take her to the East Tower, postguards. No one enters without my command. Two warriors stepped forward, roughly pulling Sarah to her feet. As they led her away, her eyes met William's. Something passed between them, a question perhaps, or the shadow of a memory. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness of the fortress. The nobles dispersed in clusters of whispered speculation, leaving Alexander alone with his advisor in the moonlight. When the courtyard had emptied, the Alpha turned to William, his composure carefully restored. Tell me everything, he commanded. Leave nothing hidden. William nodded gravely. We should speak in private, my king. The moon has ears tonight. The council chamber was warmed by a fire that cast long shadows across the stone walls. Maps covered the massive oak table territories marked with the sigils of various packs that had claimed the Sierra Nevada mountains for generations. Alexander paced while William stood by the hearth, the flames highlighting the deep lines etched into his face. 25 years ago, William began, his voice taking on the cadence of the historian. He was, Your father led the assault on the Silverstone territory. 3 days of bloodshed, 3 nights of fire. None were to be spared. Your father's command was absolute. Alexander nodded. He had been merely a boy then, too young to fight but old enough to remember the smoke that had blackened the sky for weeks afterward. The Silverstones were planning to overthrow the Alpha bloodline. They practiced forbidden magic. The attack was necessary. William's eyes reflected the dancing flames. So we were told. The king stopped pacing. You doubt my father's word. I doubt what any of us truly knew then. The old advisor moved to the table, his fingers tracing the northern boundaries where the Silverstone territory had once been marked. Now it was simply labeled as Shadow Moon hunting grounds. I was there, Alexander. I saw what happened. And the Alpha's patience was wearing thin. William met his gaze steadily. And I saw a massacre, not a battle. I saw women and children put to the sword. I saw ancient texts burned that might have held wisdom we needed. And he hesitated, weighing decades of silence against the truth now demanded of him. I saved a child, a newborn with eyes the color of winter skating. The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander stared at his advisor, disbelief warring with rage across his features. You betrayed my father. I served a higher law, William replied, unrepentant. The laws of the moon goddess herself, who forbids the slaughter of innocent cubs. I took the child to a human settlement 3 valleys away. I never expected to see her again. He shook his head slowly. Until tonight. Alexander slammed his fist against the oak table, sending maps fluttering to the floor. You kept this from me for 25 years. Would you have been ready to hear it before now? William asked quietly, the young wolf who idolized his father. The Alpha turned away, struggling to master his emotions. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled, though barely. The mate bond. Is it possible with her? William moved to the ancient bookshelf that lined one wall of the chamber. His fingers found a leather-bound volume without hesitation, as if he had consulted it many times before. The bond doesn't lie, my king, but it can be complicated. He opened the book, revealing pages of faded ink and illustrations. There is another matter we must consider. His finger traced a passage written in the old tongue. The curse. Alexander's jaw tightened. Every Alpha in his line knew of the curse, the shadow that had followed their bloodline for generations. Every mate claimed by an Alpha Nightshade died before the next eclipse. 3 times Alexander had felt the beginning of a bond, and 3 times he had awakened to find his chosen mate cold beside him, life drained away in the night. If what you say is true, if she truly is Silverstone by blood, Alexander's voice hardened, then perhaps this is the moon goddess's final cruelty. To bind me to the bloodline my father destroyed. William closed the book with gentle reverence. Or perhaps it is her wisdom, not her cruelty, that guides this bond. A knock interrupted them. Victor Stone Alexander's beta and most trusted warrior entered without waiting for permission. His sharp features were set in barely concealed disdain as he glanced at William. "The council awaits your decision regarding the prisoner, my king." Alexander nodded. "Tell them I will speak with them shortly." Victor hesitated, his gaze flicking between the Alpha and the advisor. "They're growing restless. Lord Elias suggests the traditional punishment be carried out swiftly before moonset. I am well aware of what the traditions demand, Victor." Alexander's tone left no room for argument. When the beta had departed, William spoke softly. "Victor never approved of my position in this court. He believes the old ways are weakness, not wisdom." "Victor is loyal," Alexander countered. "He puts the pack's strength above all." "Strength without wisdom is merely violence waiting to happen," William replied. The words carried the weight of a lesson oft repeated and rarely heeded. "What will you do with her?" Alexander moved to the window, gazing out at the blood-red moon beginning its descent toward the mountains. "I don't know. The bond complicates everything." "Then perhaps," William suggested gently, "you should speak with her again. Alone." The East Tower was the oldest part of Shadow Moon Fortress, its stones worn smooth by centuries of wind and weather. Sarah stood at the narrow window, her fingers tracing the cold glass as she watched the moon begin its slow descent. Her wrists still bore the marks of Silver's chains, but she had been unbound upon entering the chamber. It was too grand for a prisoner cell, a large bed with furs, a hearth with fresh logs, even a copper tub filled with steaming water in the corner. It was a room meant for guests, not traitors. The incongruity wasn't lost on her. The door opened without a knock. Sarah didn't turn, recognizing the scent before she saw him. Cedar, smoke, power. Alexander. "You should eat," he said, gesturing to the untouched tray of food on the small table. "I'm not hungry." Her voice was soft but not submissive. He crossed the room until he stood beside her at the window. For a long moment, neither spoke, both gazing out at the night sky painted in stars and shadow. "Why did you do it?" Alexander finally asked. "Save the Bloodclaw child." Sarah's reflection in the glass showed no emotion. "Because he was 7 years old. Because your warriors would have cut him down in the snow. They were following my orders." "Then your orders were wrong." She turned to face him, unflinching. "No child deserves to die for the crimes of their elders." Alexander studied her, searching for deception and finding none. "You understand that the Bloodclaws have killed dozens of our pack over the last decade, that they raid our territories and poison our hunting grounds. And how many of theirs have you killed in return?" Sarah countered. "When does it end, Alpha? When there's no one left to hunt?" A muscle in his jaw ticked at her boldness. Few dared speak to him this way, yet instead of anger he felt curiosity stirring. "William says you're Silverstone by blood." Something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps, or wariness. "I wouldn't know. I was raised by humans in a town 3 valleys from here." "Yet you found your way back." "Not by choice," her hands clenched at her sides. "My abilities manifested when I turned 16. The humans feared what they couldn't understand. I've been wandering these mountains for years, belonging nowhere." Alexander stepped closer, his presence filling the space between them. The mark at her throat pulsed faintly, responding to his proximity. "And yet the bond chose you. Why, Miss?" "Ask your moon goddess," Sarah replied bitterly. "I never asked for this connection." "Nor did I." His admission surprised them both. The silence that followed felt charged, dangerous in its intensity. Alexander reached out his fingers, hovering near the mark on her neck without touching it. "Do you feel it, the pull?" Sarah's breath hitched. "I feel something. I don't know what it means." "It means," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "that we are bound, whether we wish it or not." Outside, a wolf howled long, mournful notes that echoed through the night. Others joined, creating a chorus that seemed to voice the confusion and tension between the two souls in the tower room. Alexander stepped back abruptly. "You'll remain here until I decide what to do with you. You'll be treated well but guarded. Try to escape and my mercy will end." As he turned to leave, Sarah called after him. "The bond doesn't make me your possession, Alpha." He paused at the door. "No, it makes you something far more dangerous." The door closed behind him with finality, leaving Sarah alone with questions that had no answers and a mark that continued to burn like moonfire beneath her skin. William Greyson made his way through the fortress corridors, his steps sure despite the dim lighting. Age had not diminished his memory of these ancient halls. He had walked them since boyhood, had watched 3 generations of alphas rule from these stone walls. Now as he approached the East Tower, guards straightened at his presence. The king's orders were clear, one stated. No visitors for the prisoner. William smiled faintly. I'm not a visitor, young wolf. I'm the king's emissary. He held out a folded parchment bearing Alexander's seal, a document concerning an entirely different matter, but the young guard wouldn't know the difference. He wishes me to question her further about her origins. The guards exchanged glances before reluctantly stepping aside. William nodded his thanks and entered the tower room, closing the door firmly behind him. Sarah stood immediately, wariness evident in her posture. William Greyson, she said quietly, the king's advisor. Among other things, he replied, moving to sit in the chair nearest the fire. His joints ached in the mountain chill. Do you remember me, child? Sarah's brow furrowed. Should I? William studied her face in the firelight, searching for traces of the infant he had carried through snow-covered forests 25 years ago. Perhaps not consciously. You were very young when we met. Understanding dawned slowly in her eyes. You knew me before. I saved you, and he said simply, the night the Silverstone pack fell. Sarah sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her. My parents, my family. William's eyes filled with sorrow. Gone, child. All of them. It was a night of great darkness. Why? The question contained a lifetime of longing. Why did it happen? Fear, William replied. Fear of what your bloodline represented, of the old powers you carried. He leaned forward, voice dropping to ensure they weren't overheard. Powers that still flow in your veins whether you recognize them or not. Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to the faint spiral mark beneath her collarbone. These abilities I have. The feeling of something inside me, something that was silenced long ago. That comes from them, from the Silverstones. William nodded. Your bloodline were keepers of the old magic. Healers, dreamwalkers, those who could speak to the moon herself. Alexander's father feared that power, feared it might someday challenge his own. And now I'm bound to his son. The irony wasn't lost on her. The moon goddess works in patterns beyond our understanding, William said. Perhaps this is her way of healing an ancient wound. Sarah stood moving to the window, or reopening it. William rose as well, his aged frame moving with deliberate dignity. Either way, you are in grave danger, child. There are those in this fortress who would see you dead rather than bound to their alpha. You mean Victor? The old advisor's eyebrows rose slightly. You're perceptive. I saw how he looked at me during the trial, like I was vermin to be exterminated. She turned to face William fully. Why are you telling me this? Why help me at all? William's weathered hand reached into his robe, extracting a small object wrapped in leather. Because I made a promise the night I saved you. A promise to your mother as she lay dying. He unwrapped the leather, revealing a small pendant carved from moonstone, a spiral within a circle matching the mark on Sarah's skin. She made me swear to return this to you if you survived, to teach you what it means to be Silverstone. Sarah took the pendant with trembling fingers. The stone felt warm to her touch, pulsing with gentle energy. You've kept this all these years. I keep my promises, William said simply, even those that take decades to fulfill. A noise in the corridor alerted them both. William quickly moved toward the door. I cannot stay longer without raising suspicion, but I will return. There is much you need to know. Sarah clutched the pendant tightly. Why should I trust you? The old advisor paused, his hand on the door. Because unlike most in this fortress, I remember what it means to serve something greater than power. The truth, child. I serve the truth. After he had gone, Sarah opened her hand to study the pendant. As the moonlight touched its surface, the spiral pattern began to glow with soft silver light. Something stirred deep within her, a flutter of recognition, of awakening. The wolf she had thought silenced forever whimpered softly in the hollow of her soul. For the first time in years, Sarah felt the wild creature inside her answer. Dawn painted the mountain's gold-bathing shadow moon fortress in gentle light that belied the tensions brewing within its walls. The council chamber hummed with voices raised in argument, nobles and warriors alike demanding justice for what they perceived as their alpha's weakness. The law is clear, Lord Elias insisted, his gray beard quivering with indignation. Any who aid our enemies forfeit their lives. That she bears a potential mate mark changes nothing. Victor Stone stood beside him, arms crossed over his broad chest. The pack questions your judgment, my king. To spare her because of some mystical connection, it appears weak. Alexander stood at the head of the long table, unmoved by their protests. I have not said I will spare her. I've said I will consider all aspects of this situation before passing judgment. What is there to consider? Victor pressed. She admits her guilt freely. William, standing silently in the corner, finally spoke. There is the matter of her bloodline to consider. The last Silverstone. That has implications. Victor's laugh held no humor. Ah, yes, the old man speaks of ancient bloodlines again. Tell us, William, what dusty tomes have you consulted this time? Several council members chuckled, but William's calm never wavered. Mock if you wish, Victor, but history has a way of repeating itself when ignored. Enough, Alexander commanded. The single word silenced the chamber instantly. I will speak with the prisoner again today. Alone. His gaze swept the room, challenging anyone to object. Until then, she remains under guard, but unharmed. As the council dispersed, Victor lingered behind, waiting until they were alone. A private word, my king. Alexander nodded, though his patience was wearing thin. This bond, Victor began carefully, it's affected your judgment. You've experienced this before 3 times now, and each ended in tragedy. Why court more pain? I'm not courting anything, Alexander replied coldly. I'm considering all possibilities before acting. Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice. The elders haven't told you everything about the curse. Each mate who dies strengthens it, Alexander. Each death pulls you further from humanity, closer to the beast. If this woman dies as the others did, I know the risks. Do you, Victor's eyes held genuine concern. The last eclipse nearly broke you. Another loss might transform you completely. Alexander turned away, unwilling to acknowledge the truth in Victor's words. After his last mate died, he had spent 3 days in wolf form, unable or unwilling to return to his human shape. The memory of that wildness, that loss of control, still haunted him. I appreciate your concern, old friend, he said finally. But my decision stands. We wait. Victor bowed slightly. As you wish, my king. He departed, leaving Alexander alone with thoughts as turbulent as storm clouds. Unknown to the Alpha, Victor made his way not to his quarters, but to a seldom-used part of the fortress. There, in a chamber whose walls were etched with symbols few remembered how to read, 3 elders waited. Their faces were grim as Victor entered. Well, one asked. He refuses to act, Victor replied, frustration evident in his tone. The bond has already clouded his judgment. The eldest among them, a woman whose face bore the scars of many battles, shook her head slowly. Then we must act for him, for the good of the pack. Victor hesitated. What you suggest borders on treason. What we suggest, she countered, is preservation. The curse must run its course, Victor. If this Silverstone woman lives to see the eclipse, everything we've built could unravel. He paced the small chamber, conflicted. Alexander trusts me. Then use that trust, another elder urged. Get close to the woman. Learn what she knows. And when the time comes, the words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Victor nodded reluctantly. For the pack, he said, always for the pack. In the temple at the heart of the fortress, William Greyson knelt before the ancient altar, his fingers tracing patterns in spilled moon water. The liquid glowed faintly in the dim light, forming symbols that shifted and changed with his touch. His eyes were closed in concentration, his lips moving in silent prayer. Show me, he whispered to the moon goddess. Show me if the time has truly come. The water beneath his fingers began to glow brighter, forming a perfect crescent that matched the mark on Sarah's neck. Then slowly it transformed into the spiral of the Silverstone bloodline. Finally, the 2 symbols merged, creating a pattern William had seen only once before in a prophecy recorded centuries ago. The old advisor opened his eyes, a mixture of awe and dread filling his heart. So it begins, he murmured. After all these years, the circle closes. He rose stiffly, gathering the ancient text he had brought with him. There was much to prepare, much to teach Sarah before the eclipse. Time was short, and the enemies of truth were already moving against them. William made his way through the fortress with renewed purpose. Age might have diminished his standing in the eyes of the young wolves, but it had given him something they lacked: patience. For 50 years he had waited for this moment, had kept faith when others forgot the old ways. Now finally the moon goddess had answered his lifelong prayer. The last Silverstone had returned. The curse that haunted the Nightshade bloodline might finally be broken. If William thought grimly, they all survived long enough to see it happen. Morning light filtered through the tower window, casting long shadows across the stone floor. Sarah sat cross-legged on the bed, the Silverstone pendant cradled in her palms. For hours she had studied its intricate spiral pattern, feeling pulses of energy emanate from the moonstone with each beat of her heart. Something within her responded to its presence, something wild and ancient that had slumbered for too long. A soft knock interrupted her concentration. The door opened to reveal William carrying a stack of worn, leather-bound books in a cloth-wrapped bundle. The guards peered suspiciously into the room before allowing the elder advisor to enter. "By order of the Alpha," William announced formally, loud enough for the guards to hear, "I am to question the prisoner about Blood Claw movements in the Northern Territories." Once the door closed, his formal demeanor softened. He set his burden on the small table and looked at Sarah with eyes that had seen generations come and go. "You've been communing with the pendant," he observed, noting the faint silver glow emanating from the stone. "Good, it remembers you." Sarah closed her fingers around the moonstone. "It feels alive, like it's trying to tell me something I've forgotten." "In a way it is." William unwrapped the cloth bundle, revealing dried herbs, crystals, and small vials of liquid that caught the morning light. "The pendant is more than jewelry. It's a key to unlocking what was taken from you." "My wolf," Sarah whispered. "I've felt her presence since you gave me this, stronger than ever before." William nodded, satisfaction creasing his weathered face. "The silver poisoning you endured as punishment suppressed your ability to shift, but it didn't destroy your true nature. Nothing could." He gestured to the items he'd brought. "These will help accelerate the healing process." "Why are you doing this?" Sarah asked, watching as he arranged the items with practiced precision. "Helping me could be considered treason." William's hands paused, his eyes taking on a faraway look. 25 years ago, I stood among the ashes of your ancestral home. The air was thick with death, with loss. Your mother found me as I searched the ruins for survivors." His voice grew softer, heavy with memory. "She was mortally wounded, but her only concern was for you. She placed you in my arms, made me swear to protect you. With her final breath, she told me you were special, that you carried the blood of healers." He looked up, meeting Sarah's gaze with unexpected intensity. "I failed to save your people, child. I will not fail to save their legacy." Sarah swallowed the emotion rising in her throat. "And what is that legacy? What does it mean to be Silverstone?" William opened the largest of the books he'd brought, revealing pages filled with illustrations of wolves, moons, and ancient symbols. The Silverstone bloodline were keepers of balance between wolf and human, between pack and moon. They were healers who could draw pain from others, dreamwalkers who could traverse the veil between worlds, and most rare of all, they were the ones who could break curses. Sarah's eyes widened. "The curse that affects Alexander, that kills his mates." "Yes." William turned the pages until he found what he sought, an illustration of a wolf with a crescent moon carved into its flesh. "For generations, every mate bonded to an alpha of the Nightshade bloodline has died before the next eclipse. 3 times Alexander has felt the beginning of a bond, and 3 times he has awakened to find death beside him." Sarah felt a chill despite the room's warmth. "And now I'm marked as his next victim. Or his salvation." William pointed to another illustration, a wolf surrounded by silver light, breaking free from chains. "The prophecy speaks of one who carries dual marks, the crescent of the mate and the spiral of the healer. One who will either save the Alpha King or destroy him completely." Sarah touched the faint marks on her skin, the crescent at her throat that had appeared when Alexander first spoke to her, and the spiral birthmark beneath her collarbone. "You believe that's me?" "I know it is," William said with certainty, "but knowledge alone isn't enough. You need to reclaim your power, your true form. Only then will you have a chance against what's coming." Sarah looked at the items he'd arranged, herbs she recognized from her years living in the wilderness, crystals that seemed to pulse with inner light, and vials of liquid that smelled of moonlight and forest. "What do I need to do?" William smiled, pleased by her resolve. "First, we awaken your wolf. For the next hour, William guided Sarah through ancient breathing techniques, teaching her to connect with the wild presence inside her. He mixed herbs into a tea that tasted of earth and stars, explaining how each ingredient would help cleanse the silver from her system. As she drank, he spoke of the Silverstone history stories of healing and sacrifice of communion with the moon goddess, of the sacred duty to maintain balance. Sarah listened, absorbing each word like parched earth drinks rain. These were her people, her heritage. With each story, she felt something within her grow stronger, more insistent. The wolf was awakening. Now, William said when she had finished the tea, close your eyes. Feel your connection to the earth beneath the fortress to the moon, even though it sleeps beyond the horizon. Feel the pull of your true nature. Sarah obeyed, sinking into herself past conscious thought, past human limitations. In the darkness behind her eyes, she sensed something moving, a presence both familiar and foreign. Silvery gray with eyes that matched her own. Her wolf, not gone, never truly gone, but chained, suppressed, waiting. She's there, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with wonder. I can feel her. Call to her, William urged softly, not with words but with your heart. Tell her it's time to return. Sarah reached into the darkness, extending her consciousness toward the wolf. I'm here, she thought. I remember you. Come back to me. Pain shot through her, suddenly bone-deep, searing, as if her body were being torn apart from within. She gasped, doubling over on the bed. William's hand found her shoulder, steadying her. Breathe through it, he instructed calmly. The transformation is painful the first time after suppression. Your body is remembering its true form. Sarah gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead. The pain intensified, racing along her spine, down her limbs. Her vision blurred, the room's contours melting into pools of light and shadow. Inside her mind, the wolf moved closer, no longer separated by darkness. That's it, William encouraged. Let her come, don't fight the change. With a cry that was half human, half howl, Sarah surrendered to the transformation. Her bones shifted, cracking and reforming. Fur sprouted along her skin in a ripple of silver gray. Her face elongated into a muzzle, teeth sharpening into canine points. The world around her transformed as well. Colors fading, scents intensifying until she could smell the history embedded in the stones themselves. And then stillness. The pain receded like a tide, leaving behind a strange new wholeness. Sarah looked down at pose where her hands had been, felt the weight of her tail, the keenness of her senses. She was wolf again for the first time in years. William gazed at her with undisguised awe. Beautiful, he murmured, a true Silverstone wolf. Sarah moved carefully around the room, reacquainting herself with four-legged motion. Everything felt different in this form, more immediate, more vibrant. She could hear conversations 3 floors below, could smell the approach of clouds promising afternoon rain, and through it all, a new awareness of the bond pulsing at her throat, connecting her to Alexander, even through stone walls and distance. A commotion in the hallway caught their attention. Heavy footsteps approached rapidly. William moved to stand between Sarah and the door just as it burst open. Alexander strode in, his expression thunderous. Behind him, Victor watched with calculating eyes. The Alpha stopped abruptly at the sight of the silver wolf standing beside his elderly advisor. Recognition dawned immediately in his golden eyes. What have you done? He demanded of William, though his gaze remained fixed on Sarah. The old advisor stood his ground, dignity lending him strength. I have helped her reclaim what was wrongfully taken, my king, her true form. Victor pushed forward. This is treason, old man. You've restored power to a prisoner, a traitor. She is Silverstone, William replied calmly, the last of her bloodline, and she is bound to our Alpha by the goddess herself. Would you have her remain crippled when she might be the key to breaking the curse? Alexander raised a hand, silencing Victor's retort. He approached Sarah, slowly studying her wolf form with an intensity that made her want to retreat. Instead, she stood taller, meeting his gaze with eyes that were still unmistakably hers, ice blue against silver fur. Shift back, he commanded softly. Sarah hesitated, uncertain if she could control the transformation so soon. William nodded encouragingly. Focus on your human form. Visualize the change. Closing her eyes, Sarah concentrated on returning to herself. The process was quicker this time, less painful. Within moments, she stood before them in human form, her clothes miraculously intact. Another gift of the Silverstone bloodline, William had explained earlier. Alexander circled her, slowly, the predator in him evident with each deliberate step. "How long have you been planning this, William?" "Since the night I recognized her in the courtyard," the advisor admitted. "But in truth, I've been waiting for this moment for 25 years. Victor scoffed. "You expect us to believe this woman, this criminal, is the answer to a prophecy that she can break a curse that has plagued our bloodline for generations?" "I expect you to consider all possibilities," William replied evenly, "as any wise leader would." Alexander stopped directly before Sarah, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, could sense the wolf beneath his skin, straining toward hers. The bond between them pulsed stronger now that her wolf was awakened. "What did it feel like?" he asked quietly. Shifting again after so long. The question surprised her. It wasn't what she had expected from him. Not anger or accusations, but genuine curiosity. "Like coming home," she answered honestly, "like being whole again." Something flickered across his face, understanding perhaps, or longing. Alexander knew what it meant to be separated from one's true nature. After each mate's death, he had struggled to maintain his human form, the grief and rage threatening to consume him. "The curse," he said, turning to William. "You truly believe she can break it?" William nodded solemnly. "She bears both marks, my king, the crescent and the spiral. According to the oldest text, such a one is destined to either end the curse or end the bloodline." Victor stepped forward, his voice sharp with warning. "And you would risk everything on ancient superstitions. The eclipse is less than a month away. If she fails, if she dies like the others, you know what will happen." "I'll lose myself completely." Alexander finished the words heavy with dread. "The beast will consume what remains of the man." Sarah looked between them, understanding dawning. "That's why you've become more wolf than man with each death. The curse doesn't just kill your mates, it destroys pieces of your humanity." Alexander's gaze snapped to hers, surprised by her perception. "Yes." A charged silence filled the room. Victor watched with narrowed eyes, calculating. William stood resolute, believing in the path he had set before them. And Alexander, the Alpha King, the cursed ruler, stood at a crossroads, weighing duty against hope. Finally he spoke. "She will remain in the East Tower, but no longer as prisoner. As guest, as—" He hesitated, the word foreign on his tongue, potential Luna. Victor's objection was immediate. "My king, the council will never—" "The council doesn't rule here," Alexander cut him off. "I do, and I have decided." He turned to William. "You will continue her instruction. Teach her what it means to be Silverstone. Prepare her for what lies ahead." Then to Sarah, "You will not leave these walls without escort. You will not communicate with anyone outside the fortress." "Understood." Sarah nodded, recognizing the concession for what it was, not freedom, but a loosening of chains. "Good." Alexander moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her with eyes that held too many emotions to name. "Shift again tonight. Run in the inner courtyard. Your wolf needs to remember her strength." After they had gone, Sarah turned to William, questions tumbling from her. "What happens now? How do I break a curse I know nothing about? What if Victor is right and I die like the others?" The old advisor's face was grave but determined. "Now we prepare. The eclipse approaches, and with it, the moment of greatest danger and greatest possibility." He gathered his books, his movements deliberate, despite his age. "Rest today. Tonight you run. Tomorrow we begin your true education as a Silverstone." As evening descended over the Sierra Nevada mountains, the sky darkened to deep indigo. Stars emerged like scattered diamonds across the vault of heaven, and a half-moon rose, casting silver light over Shadow Moon Fortress. In the inner courtyard, sheltered from prying eyes by ancient stone walls, Alexander waited. He had dismissed his usual guards, wanting no witnesses to what was about to transpire. Only William stood nearby, a silent guardian of traditions long forgotten by most. The air held the scent of pine and approaching rain, and somewhere in the distance, a lone wolf howled, a sentinel, announcing the night's beginning. "Will she come?" Alexander asked, his voice betraying more eagerness than he intended. William smiled faintly. "She will. The wolf craves freedom once awakened." As if summoned by his words, Sarah emerged from the shadows of the East Tower. She had changed from her simple prisoner's garb into clothing William had provided, soft leather pants and a loose tunic of deep blue that complemented her eyes. Around her neck, the silver stone pendant gleamed in the moonlight. She approached cautiously, her gaze never leaving Alexander. The bond between them thrummed with awareness, with possibility. Neither spoke for a long moment, each taking the measure of the other without the barriers of formal roles. Finally, Alexander broke the silence. "Show me your wolf." Sarah closed her eyes, her transformation smoother now, quicker. Within seconds, the silver wolf stood before him, magnificent in the moonlight. Alexander circled her slowly, admiring the rare coloring, the strength evident in her lean form. Then, with a fluidity born of a lifetime shifting between forms, he transformed as well. His wolf was massive, black as midnight, with eyes of molten gold. Power radiated from him, the Alpha's dominance, a tangible force in the air. Side by side, they created a striking tableau, shadow and light, night and moon, perfectly balanced opposites. William stepped back, giving them space. "Run," he encouraged. "Remember what it means to be wolf." Sarah moved first, racing across the courtyard with a grace that belied her years of suppression. Alexander followed quickly, overtaking her, leading her through hidden passages and sheltered gardens within the fortress walls. They ran beneath the stars, two wolves freed momentarily from the burdens of prophecy and curse. For Sarah, the experience was intoxicating. The wind in her fur, the earth beneath her paws, the moonlight bathing her in silver. These sensations, long denied, flooded her with joy. Beside her, Alexander ran with powerful strides, occasionally brushing against her flank, guiding her through territory she didn't know. In wolf form, the complications of their human lives receded. There was no prisoner, and king no curse and salvation. There was only the run, the night, the primal connection to each other and to the moon above. They paused at a small, reflecting pool, both bending to drink the cool water. Their reflections rippled together, black wolf and silver, and something passed between them, an understanding beyond words. Sarah felt Alexander's loneliness, his fear of the approaching eclipse. He sensed her determination, her newfound purpose. A sound caught their attention, footsteps approaching from the main hall. Instantly alert, Alexander positioned himself before Sarah, his massive form a shield. Victor appeared at the courtyard entrance, surprise evident in his expression before he masked it with his usual cool detachment. "My apologies for interrupting my king," he said, addressing Alexander despite his wolf form. It was common knowledge that alphas could understand human speech even while shifted. "The Northern Sentinels have reported movement along the border. Bloodclaw scouts possibly." Alexander growled low in his throat, clearly displeased by the interruption. With obvious reluctance, he shifted back to human form, his naked torso gleaming in the moonlight. "How many?" he demanded. "At least 6, moving in pairs. They seem to be searching for something." Victor's gaze slid to Sarah, still in wolf form. "Or someone." Alexander's posture stiffened. "Post additional guards along the northern wall. Double the patrols until dawn. I'll join the Sentinel team at first light." Victor nodded, his attention still fixed on Sarah. "And what of our guest? If the Bloodclaws are searching for her, perhaps they have plans we should know about." "Sarah stays within the fortress," Alexander replied firmly, "under my protection." "Of course, my king." Victor bowed slightly, but his eyes held calculation. "I'll inform the council of your decision." After he had gone, Alexander turned to Sarah with a sigh. "Shift back. Our run is over for tonight." Sarah obeyed, the transformation becoming easier with each practice. When she stood before him in human form, she saw weariness etched across his features, the burden of leadership visible in the set of his shoulders. "You think the Bloodclaws are looking for me?" she asked. "It's possible." Alexander gazed toward the mountains as if he could see beyond stone and distance to the threats gathering there. "You saved one of their young. Perhaps they seek to return the favor. Or perhaps they see you as a potential weapon against us." "I'm not a weapon," Sarah said firmly. "I won't be used by either side in this endless war." Alexander turned back to her, his expression softening slightly. "What will you be then? Sarah Silverstone, healer, Lunar savior?" His voice lowered. "Or will you be my doom, as the prophecy warns might happen?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Sarah touched the pendant at her throat, drawing strength from its connection to her heritage. "I will be what I choose to be," she answered, "not what prophecies or curses or ancient feuds dictate." A smile touched Alexander's lips, brief, unexpected, transforming his stern features. "William chose well all those years ago. You have the Silverstone spirit regardless of what else you may have forgotten. He stepped closer, his presence filling her senses. The bond between them pulsed stronger with proximity, a steady rhythm like a second heartbeat. His hand lifted fingers hovering near the crescent mark at her throat without touching it. The curse will try to take you, he said softly, as it took the others. I can feel it already circling us, hungry for your light. Sarah held his gaze steadily. Then we'll fight it. Together. Together, he repeated the word foreign on his tongue. Alexander Nightshade had stood alone for so long, bearing the weight of leadership and curse without sharing either burden. The concept of partnership of trust was almost forgotten among them. The moment stretched between them, fraught with unspoken possibilities. Then Alexander stepped back, his expression closing once more. Rest, he commanded, though his voice held less authority than before. Tomorrow, the real work begins. True to Alexander's prediction, dawn brought new challenges. Sarah awoke to find William waiting in her chamber, his arms filled with ancient texts and artifacts. Behind him stood a woman Sarah hadn't met before, tall, regal, with silver hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that had seen decades of pack politics. Sarah, this is Helena Grey, keeper of Lunar lore, William introduced her. She will instruct you in the traditions expected of an alpha's mate. Helena surveyed Sarah with a critical eye. She's thin for a wolf, and those clothes won't do at all for council appearances. Sarah bristled at being discussed as if she weren't present. I'm not concerned with appearances. I need to understand the curse, not pack fashion. A smile touched Helena's stern lips. Spirited, good. You'll need that fire in the days ahead. She set a bundle on the bed clothing in rich fabrics of deep blue and silver. But appearances matter in a world ruled by wolves who judge strength before all else. Dress the part of Luna while William teaches you its substance. The day that followed was intense, filled with more information than Sarah could fully absorb. Helena drilled her in pack protocol, the complex hierarchy that governed wolf society, and the specific responsibilities of a Luna traditions Sarah would need to navigate if she were to be accepted by the Shadowmoon pack. William, meanwhile, focused on her Silverstone heritage. He taught her to channel the energy of her pendant, to sense the imbalances in others that might require healing. By midday, Sarah could detect the chronic pain in Helena's right hip, an old battle wound, and by evening she had learned to draw some of that pain into herself, temporarily relieving the older woman's discomfort. The ability to heal comes with responsibility, William cautioned, as Sarah winced from the absorbed pain. Your bloodline carries the gift of taking others' suffering, but you must learn to transform it, not merely contain it. That was the great wisdom of the Silverstones. They could take darkness and transmute it to light. Is that how I'll break the curse? Sarah asked, massaging her aching hand where Helena's pain now resided. By absorbing it, William's expression grew troubled. The curse is far more powerful than physical pain. It was created through death, through betrayal of the deepest kind. To break it, he hesitated. The texts speak of sacrifice of blood freely given, but the exact nature of what's required was lost when your family's library burned. Sarah absorbed this troubling information in silence. The more she learned of her heritage, the more she understood the enormity of what had been lost when the Silverstone pack was destroyed. Generations of knowledge of carefully preserved wisdom, reduced to ash in a single night of violence. As dusk approached, a knock at the door interrupted their lessons. Alexander entered, his expression grave. Behind him came Victor, whose eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Sarah dressed in the traditional colors of a Luna. The Bloodclaw Scouts have withdrawn, Alexander announced, but they left this. He held out a small object wrapped in leather. It was pinned to a sentinel tree at our border. William took the object, carefully unwrapping it, to reveal a carved wooden token bearing the symbol of the Bloodclaw pack, a crescent moon pierced by a fang. Attached to it was a folded note. The old advisor read it silently, his weathered face growing paler with each word. What does it say? Sarah asked, dread pooling in her stomach. William looked up, his eyes finding hers. It's addressed to you, from Caleb Reed of the Bloodclaw Council. Victor stepped forward. Caleb Reed, the son of their Alpha. Yes. William handed the note to Sarah, and apparently someone from your past. Sarah unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. The handwriting was achingly familiar, though she hadn't seen it in years. Sarah, word reached us of your capture. The child you saved as well thanks to your sacrifice. Now we would repay that debt. 3 nights from now, when the moon is dark, we will come for you. Be ready. There are things you should know, truths about your past, about the curse that binds the Nightshade King. Don't trust what they tell you. The man you once knew still remembers, still waits until the new moon, Caleb. Sarah lowered the note, her mind reeling. Caleb, the name unlocked memories she had buried deep, a young man with kind eyes and a gentle smile who had found her wandering the forest 5 years ago, half-starved and afraid of her own abilities. He had helped her, protected her until a border skirmish with Shadow Moon wolves had separated them. She had believed him dead. You know him, Alexander said. It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded slowly. He helped me once when I had nowhere to go. I didn't know he was Bloodclaw then. He never told me. Victor's voice cut like a blade. How convenient. The enemy just happens to have a personal connection to the woman who bears our Alpha's mate mark. He turned to Alexander. Can't you see she's their plant, their weapon against you? No, Sarah protested. I haven't seen Caleb in years. I didn't even know he was alive until now. Alexander's face had hardened into an unreadable mask. What truths does he claim to know about the curse, about your past? I don't know, Sarah answered honestly, but I'm not leaving with him. Whatever he knows, I can learn here. From William, she hesitated, from you. Alexander studied her for a long moment, weighing her words against the suspicion Victor had planted. The bond between them vibrated with tension, with uncertainty. The new moon is when you are most vulnerable, William interjected quietly, when the curse grows strongest. It's no coincidence they plan to come for you then. Alexander nodded, decision made. Double the guards beginning tomorrow. No one enters or leaves without my direct approval. His gaze returned to Sarah. And you will not be alone at any time, not even for a moment. You think I'd try to escape? Sarah asked, hurt coloring her voice. I think forces are aligning against us both, Alexander replied, and I won't take chances with what might be our only hope of breaking the curse. He glanced at the Silverstone pendant around her neck. Continue your training. Learn everything William can teach you before the new moon arrives. With that, he departed, Victor following close behind. Helena excused herself as well, leaving Sarah alone with William. The old advisor sighed heavily, sinking into a chair by the fire. This complicates matters, he said. The Bloodclaws have their own prophecies, their own interpretations of your role. They would use you just as Victor fears, though not in the way he imagines. Sarah paced the room, Caleb's note clutched in her hand. What do you mean? William stared into the flames, his voice dropping to ensure they weren't overheard. There is another aspect of the curse not recorded in our texts, but I have heard whispers, rumors from wolves who trade across pack lines. It's said that the death of each Alpha's mate doesn't just strengthen the curse, it feeds power to someone else, someone who gains strength with each sacrifice. Sarah stopped pacing, a chill running through her, despite the fire's warmth. Who, that I don't know. William's eyes reflected the dancing flames, but I fear we'll find out all too soon. The next morning dawned, gray and cold clouds hanging low over the mountains like a shroud. Sarah stood at her window, watching rain beat against the glass, trying to process everything she'd learned. Her mind kept returning to Caleb's note, to the cryptic warnings it contained. What truths did he know? Could she trust William's teachings, or was she being led down a path that would end in her destruction? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Alexander Rains still glistening in his dark hair. He wore simpler clothes than usual, a black tunic and leather pants, no symbols of his rank. His expression was guarded, but something in his eyes had softened since their confrontation the previous evening. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't quite a command, but neither was it a request. Sarah followed him through the fortress corridors, noting the increased guard presence. Warriors nodded respectfully as they passed, though many cast curious or suspicious glances at her. News of Caleb's note had clearly spread. Alexander led her to a part of the fortress she hadn't seen before. A massive library with ceilings that soared 2 stories high and shelves packed with books, scrolls, and artifacts. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting patterns of color across the stone floor. The Shadow Moon archives, Alexander explained, watching her reaction. Centuries of our history, our knowledge. Some of these texts date back to the first Alpha. Sarah moved through the space with wonder, her fingers trailing along leather-bound volumes. It's incredible. I've never seen so many books in one place. Few have. This library is restricted to pack leadership and scholars. Alexander followed her, his presence a constant shadow. William practically lives here when he's not fulfilling his council duties. Why show me this? Sarah asked, turning to face him. Alexander's gaze was steady, assessing. Because knowledge is power in our world. If you truly wish to understand the curse to break it, rather than fall victim to it, you'll need access to everything we know. He led her to a specific section where the shelves were marked with silver symbols. These are the texts salvaged from the Silverstone territory after, he hesitated, after the conflict. Not many survived the fires, but what we have is yours to study. Sarah stared at the shelves, emotion tightening her throat. These books had belonged to her family, her ancestors. They represented a small fragment of the heritage that had been stolen from her. Thank you, she said softly. Alexander nodded, then gestured to a large table where William already waited, surrounded by open books and unrolled scrolls. Your education continues today. I've instructed William to hold nothing back and to teach you everything he knows about both bloodlines and the curse that binds them. Will you stay? The question slipped out before Sarah could reconsider it. Something flickered across Alexander's face, surprise, perhaps, or uncertainty. I have duties that require my attention. The Bloodclaw message has the council in an uproar. He hesitated, then added, but I will return later. There are aspects of the curse that only I have experienced, things you should know. After he had gone, Sarah joined William at the table. The old advisor smiled warmly, pleased by this development. Our Alpha doesn't grant access to these archives lightly. You've earned a measure of trust, it seems. Or he's desperate, Sarah replied, though without bitterness. The new moon is approaching, and with it the risk of another loss. Perhaps both are true. William indicated the materials he'd gathered. Today we focus on the origin of the curse. Its beginning may hold the key to its ending. For hours they immersed themselves in ancient texts, piecing together the fragmented history of the feud between Nightshade and Silverstone bloodlines. Sarah learned of an alliance long ago. Two powerful pacts joined through marriage-sharing territories and knowledge. The Nightshades were warriors, protectors. The Silverstones were healers, peacekeepers. Together they had maintained balance across the Sierra Nevada territories for generations. Then what happened? Sarah asked, studying a faded family tree that showed the intermarriage of the two bloodlines. What turned allies into enemies? William pulled forward an ancient journal, its pages brittle with age. Betrayal, a forbidden love, and blood spilled beneath an eclipsed moon. He pointed to an entry dated nearly 200 years earlier. The Alpha King of that time, Matthias Nightshade, had taken a Silverstone bride. Their union was celebrated as the strengthening of an ancient bond. But the Alpha's brother, Sebastian, loved her as well. Sarah read the faded text, a chill running through her, as the tragic story unfolded. Sebastian had conspired with dark forces, practicing forbidden magic to win the Luna's heart. When she rejected him, choosing loyalty to her mate and pack, Sebastian's love had twisted into obsession, then hatred. On the night of a lunar eclipse, he had murdered her in a blood ritual designed to curse his brother's bloodline for all time. The first victim of the curse was Sebastian himself, William explained. Matthias executed him for his crimes. But with his dying breath, Sebastian bound his spirit to the curse, declaring that no Nightshade Alpha would ever know love without loss, that each mate's death would feed his power in the Shadow Realm. Sarah looked up from the journal, horror dawning. So each time a Luna dies, Sebastian grows stronger, William confirmed grimly, and the beast within the Alpha gains ground against the man. The curse is designed to destroy both lover and beloved, leaving only monsters in their place. But I'm Silverstone, Sarah said, thoughts racing. If the curse was created to destroy a Silverstone Luna, why would my bloodline be the key to breaking it? William turned to another text, this one bound in silver-tooled leather. Because balance demands it. What Silverstone blood helped create, only Silverstone blood can undo. But the exact method, he sighed heavily. That knowledge was lost when your family's libraries burned. Sarah sat back, overwhelmed by the weight of history and expectation pressing down on her. So I'm supposed to break a 200-year-old curse without knowing how, while fighting against a vengeful spirit that grows stronger with each death. She shook her head. No wonder Alexander keeps his distance, even with the bond pulling us together. He's trying to protect me and himself. The mate bond wasn't part of Sebastian's calculation. William said, a hint of hope in his voice. It's the moon goddess's counterbalance to his dark magic. The bond gives strength where the curse seeks to weaken. It creates connection where the curse demands isolation. Sarah touched the crescent mark at her throat, feeling its steady pulse. Then why hasn't it been enough to save the others? Alexander has been bonded before, yet each mate still died. Because the bond was incomplete, came a deep voice from behind them. Sarah turned to find Alexander standing at the entrance to their alcove, his expression solemn. He approached the table, studying the texts they had gathered. Each time I held back, he continued, his voice low with confession. I feared what complete bonding would mean for me, for them. I kept parts of myself separate, thinking to shield them from the curse. His eyes met Sarah's, filled with old pain. I was wrong. The bond needs to be complete to have any chance against Sebastian's magic. Complete how? Sarah asked, though something instinctive within her already knew the answer. Alexander's gaze dropped to the pendant at her throat. The bond must be sealed in all ways, mind, spirit, body. No barriers, no reservations. He looked back at the ancient texts. But even that might not be enough without the Silverstone knowledge that was lost. William cleared his throat. Perhaps not all was lost. He reached into his robe, extracting a small key that hung on a chain around his neck. I've waited for the right moment to share this. I believe that moment has come. He stood, moving to a section of shelving that appeared no different from the rest. With practiced fingers, he pressed a specific sequence of carved symbols, revealing a hidden compartment. The key fit perfectly into a lock embedded in the wood. When he turned it, the compartment slid open, revealing a single book bound in white leather, its cover unmarked. The last journal of Elena Silverstone, William said reverently. Your mother, Sarah. I recovered it the night of the attack and have kept it hidden all these years, waiting for you to return. The white leather journal lay on the table between them, its unblemished cover gleaming in the library's filtered light. Sarah stared at it, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her mother's journal. The last words of a woman she had never known, preserved through decades of secrecy and patience. You kept this hidden all these years. Alexander's voice was dangerously quiet, his eyes fixed on William. Even from me. The old advisor stood tall, despite the implied accusation. I swore an oath to Elena Silverstone as she lay dying, that her words would remain sealed until her daughter returned to claim them. His weathered hand rested protectively on the journal. Some promises transcend even loyalty to the Alpha, my king. Alexander's jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. Then it seems the time has come to honor your oath. He gestured toward Sarah. It belongs to her now. With reverent hands, William placed the journal before Sarah. Your mother was a visionary among her people, the last true dream walker of the Silverstone line. What knowledge she possessed. His voice faltered with emotion. Perhaps enough to save you both. Sarah traced the unmarked cover, feeling a strange warmth emanate from the leather binding. How do I open it? There's no clasp. William smiled faintly. Silverstone blood is the key. One drop will unseal what was written for your eyes alone. Alexander produced a small knife from his belt, offering it handle first to Sarah. May I? She nodded, extending her palm. With gentle precision, Alexander made a small cut across her skin. Blood welled bright red against her pale flesh. Sarah turned her hand, allowing a single drop to fall onto the journal's cover. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The white leather absorbed her blood like thirsty earth drinks rain. Where the droplet landed, silver lines began to spread outward, forming intricate patterns across the cover, a spiral within a crescent moon surrounded by ancient symbols that pulsed with inner light. The Silverstone seal, William breathed, just as it appeared on your family's great hall. The journal's cover parted of its own accord, pages turning as if guided by invisible hands until they settled at the beginning of the text. Sarah leaned forward, heart in her throat, as she read the first lines written in elegant, flowing script, to my daughter whom I shall never know in this life. If you are reading these words, then William has kept his promise and you have survived to find your heritage. The blood that flows in your veins carries both blessing and burden. It marks you as the last of our line and perhaps the salvation of those we once called enemy. Sarah's voice faltered as emotion threatened to overwhelm her. Alexander moved closer, his presence steadying as she continued to read aloud. The curse that binds the Nightshade bloodline was born of love, twisted to hatred of power corrupted by jealousy. Sebastian's spirit has grown stronger with each death, feeding on the sacrifice of innocent souls. But what was begun in darkness can only be ended in light. Three elements must align to break the curse: the eclipse that strengthens Sebastian's power, the complete bond between true mates, and the willing sacrifice of one who carries dual blood. The prophecy speaks of one marked twice by mate bond and healer's gift, who will stand at the threshold between shadow and light. Sarah looked up, meeting Alexander's intense gaze. Dual blood, she whispered. What does that mean? William leaned forward, studying the text. Your mother was Silverstone by birth, but she married into another bloodline before the pack fell. It was unusual. Most Silverstone women became Lunas to Alphas of other packs, not common wolves. Sarah returned to the journal, scanning ahead. Her breath caught as she found the answer written in her mother's hand. You carry not only Silverstone blood, my daughter, but Nightshade as well. Your father was Nathaniel Nightshade, younger brother to the Alpha. Our love was forbidden during the growing conflict between our packs, but the moon goddess blessed our union despite the elders' disapproval. In you, the bloodlines that have warred for generations are united once more. The revelation struck like lightning. Sarah looked up at Alexander, who had gone utterly still. Nathaniel, he said, his voice barely audible. My uncle. He was reported killed in a border skirmish months before the final assault on Silverstone territory. A lie, William said softly. He defected to the Silverstones, married Elena in secret. Your father, the old advisor hesitated. Your father considered it the ultimate betrayal. So I'm both, Sarah said, trying to absorb the implications. Silverstone and Nightshade, healer and warrior. The one marked twice, Alexander murmured, to his eyes fixed on the crescent at her throat and the spiral birthmark beneath her collarbone. The prophecy spoke true. Sarah continued reading, her mother's words gaining urgency. Sebastian's curse requires blood to maintain its power. The blood of mates bonded to the Alpha. But to break the curse requires blood freely given by one who carries both bloodlines. Not in death, but in willing sacrifice during the eclipse, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. The ritual is ancient, preserved in the oldest texts of our people. I have transcribed it here, though I pray you never need it. But if fate has bound you to a Nightshade Alpha, if the curse threatens to claim you as it has claimed others, then these words may be your salvation and his. The pages that followed contain detailed instructions for a complex ritual to be performed during the lunar eclipse. Diagrams showed precise arrangements of crystals, herbs, and carved symbols. Incantations in the old language filled the margins. And at the center of it all, a circle where two wolves, Alpha and Luna, would stand as the moon's shadow passed across its face. This is it, William said, his voice filled with wonder, the knowledge we thought lost forever. Alexander studied the ritual instructions with intense focus. It requires the blood of both Alpha and Luna freely given, a symbolic death and rebirth. He looked up, meeting Sarah's gaze. And complete bonding before the ritual begins. The implications hung in the air between them. Complete bonding, mind-spirit, and body united through the mate bond. The vulnerability it would require from them both was staggering. Sarah turned another page, finding a personal message addressed directly to her. My beloved daughter, if you have found your way to these words, then the burden of breaking the curse has fallen to you. Know that this was always your destiny, to heal the rift between our bloodlines, to end the cycle of vengeance that has claimed too many lives. The path ahead will demand courage beyond measure. Sebastian's spirit will fight to maintain his hold on the living world. He will use every weapon at his disposal, doubt, fear, and those susceptible to his influence among the living. Trust only those whose loyalty has been proven through sacrifice. Above all, remember that the bond between true mates is the moon goddess's greatest gift, a light capable of penetrating even the deepest darkness. Where the curse separates, the bond unites. Where the curse destroys, the bond creates. This is the balance that Sebastian sought to corrupt, and only by restoring this balance can his power be broken forever. I send these words to you across time, across the veil that separates mother from daughter. May the goddess guide your path and protect your heart. You are the last Silverstone, but also the first of something new, something better. With eternal love, Elena's silence filled the library alcove as Sarah closed the journal. her mother's final words echoing in her mind. Alexander stood motionless, processing everything they had learned. William watched them both, his aged eyes reflecting a lifetime of waiting for this moment. The eclipse is in 3 days, Alexander finally said, his voice steady despite the weight of revelation. The new moon comes tomorrow night. Sebastian's power will be growing stronger by the hour. And the blood claws will be coming for Sarah, William added gravely. Their message was clear. Sarah clutched the journal to her chest, feeling a connection to her mother that transcended death and time. Caleb said there were truths I should know. Do you think he knows about my dual bloodline, about the ritual? Alexander's expression darkened. If he does, it raises questions about how the blood claws came by such knowledge, and why they've chosen now to reveal it. We cannot trust them, William said firmly. Elena's warning was specific: trust only those proven through sacrifice. Then we proceed with what we know, Alexander decided. Sarah continues her training. The ritual preparations begin today. He turned to the old advisor. William, you'll oversee the gathering of everything needed for the eclipse ceremony. The elderly wolf nodded solemnly. I'll need access to the old storage chambers. Some of these herbs and crystals haven't been used in generations. You'll have it. Alexander's attention returned to Sarah, his gaze intense. As for the bonding requirement, attention filled the air between them, not unpleasant, but charged with possibility and uncertainty. The mate bond pulsed at Sarah's throat, responding to Alexander's proximity to the unspoken acknowledgement of what must happen before the eclipse. We have 3 days, Sarah said quietly. First, I need to master my abilities, to understand what it truly means to be Silverstone. She touched the journal reverently. My mother has given us the key. Now we need to be worthy of using it. Alexander nodded, respect evident in his gaze. Then let's begin. Every moment counts from here forward. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of concentrated effort. William and Sarah remained in the library, poring over Elena's journal and cross-referencing its instructions with other ancient texts. Alexander departed to make arrangements for the eclipse ritual, instructing the most trusted pack members to gather rare materials without revealing their purpose. As evening approached, Victor Stone entered the library, his expression carefully neutral as he surveyed their work. The council requests your presence, my king, he announced to Alexander, who had returned an hour earlier. The elders are concerned about the increased security and unusual preparations. Alexander straightened from the table where he'd been studying Elena's ritual diagrams. Tell them I'll address their concerns tomorrow. Tonight we have more pressing matters. Victor's gaze drifted to the white leather journal, curiosity evident, despite his attempt at indifference. New information has come to light. Nothing that concerns the council at present, Alexander replied, his tone making it clear the subject was closed. A muscle twitched in Victor's jaw, but he nodded respectfully. As you wish, my king. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at Sarah. The Bloodclaw messenger approaches our northern border under a flag of truce. He claims to have information specifically for you, Sarah Silverstone. Sarah exchanged glances with Alexander. Caleb, she said softly. Most likely, Victor agreed. The Alpha has granted him safe passage to deliver his message, but no further. He awaits your decision on whether to receive him. The request hung in the air, fraught with implications. Meeting with Caleb could provide valuable information, or it could be a trap designed to separate Sarah from Alexander's protection on the night when the curse's power was growing. I'll see him, Sarah decided, her voice firmer than she felt. But not alone. Alexander nodded his agreement. Bring him to the Great Hall at nightfall. He will speak his piece under my roof, under my watch. After Victor had departed, William voiced the concern they all shared. This timing is too convenient. The Bloodclaws sending an envoy on the new moon when Sebastian's influence is strongest. That's precisely why I want to hear what he has to say, Sarah replied. If Caleb knows about the ritual, about my dual bloodline, we need to understand how and why. Alexander studied her with golden eyes that missed nothing. You trusted him once. I did, before I knew who he was, before I knew who I was. Sarah touched the silver stone pendant at her throat. But my mother warned that Sebastian will use anyone susceptible to his influence. No one can be trusted without proof of loyalty. And yet we must risk trusting someone, William said quietly. The ritual requires at least one witness to stand outside the circle, someone to complete the incantations, while you both are undergoing the transformation. Alexander's brow furrowed. It can't be you. The old advisor shook his head regretfully. The witness must be in their prime strength, able to withstand the backlash of power when Sebastian's spirit fights back. At my age, he gestured to his frail frame, I would not survive it. Lord Thorne, a grizzled warrior who had served alongside William for decades, entered the library without announcement. His weathered face was set in grim lines, but his eyes held steady purpose. I've been listening outside, he admitted without apology, and I offer myself as witness. William turned to his old friend with surprise. Thorne, you know the risks. Better than most, the old warrior replied. I've lived long enough to see 3 Lunas die, 3 times watched our Alpha lose pieces of himself. He straightened his back, standing taller despite his years. If my life buys an end to this curse, it's well spent. Alexander studied the veteran warrior appraisingly. Your loyalty has never been questioned, Lord Thorne, but this ritual requires more than courage. It demands specific knowledge of the old ways. Which I can teach him, William interjected. Thorne may lack my years in the archives, but his memory has always been keen. What I know he can learn in the time we have. Sarah looked between the 2 elders, something warming inside her at the sight of these aged wolves standing ready to sacrifice for a future they might never see. This was wisdom her mother had spoken of, the foresight to plant trees whose shade you would never sit beneath. We accept your offer, she said before Alexander could speak, with gratitude. Alexander nodded his agreement. Let's hear what the Bloodclaw's messenger has to say. Then we'll decide who stands with us during the eclipse. As darkness fell across the Sierra Nevada mountains, the Shadow Moon Fortress transformed. Torches blazed along the corridors, casting long shadows against stone walls. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at attention, their faces impassive but alert. The Great Hall, normally reserved for pact ceremonies and major council sessions, had been prepared for a diplomatic meeting of the highest importance. Alexander sat on his throne dressed in formal Alpha attire, black, with silver accents that caught the torchlight. Beside him stood William the Elder Advisor's presence, lending historical weight to the proceedings. Sarah waited at Alexander's right hand, clothed in the deep blue and silver of a Luna in waiting. The Silverstone pendant gleamed at her throat, its spiral pattern occasionally catching the light with an otherworldly glow. The massive doors at the end of the hall swung open. Victor entered first, followed by a tall, broad-shouldered man with auburn hair and eyes the color of amber. Caleb Reed walked with the confidence of someone accustomed to power, his gaze sweeping the hall before settling on Sarah. Recognition, relief, and something more complex passed across his features. Sarah, he said, her name carrying years of memory. Caleb. She kept her voice neutral, though the sight of him stirred conflicted emotions. He had been kind to her once, had taught her to survive in the wilderness when her abilities first manifested and humans had driven her out. But he had also hidden his true identity, his connection to the Bloodclaw pack that had been at war with Shadow Moon for generations. Victor announced formally, Caleb Reed of the Bloodclaw Council, son of Alpha James Reed, comes under flag of truce to deliver a message to Sarah Silverstone. Alexander's voice filled the hall. Speak your peace, Bloodclaw. You have been granted safe passage for this purpose alone. Caleb bowed slightly, a gesture of respect, if not submission. I thank you for your hospitality, Alpha Nightshade. His attention returned to Sarah, his expression softening. When I heard of your capture, I feared the worst. The child you saved, my nephew, speaks of you as his guardian angel. I'm not a prisoner here, Sarah replied, the half-truth uncomfortable on her tongue. While her status had improved dramatically, she was still not free to leave the fortress. Perhaps not in name, Caleb said, doubt evident in his tone. He reached into his cloak, extracting a small object wrapped in silk. I've come to return something that belongs to you. Something you left behind when we were separated 5 years ago. He approached, slowly unwrapping the silk to reveal a bracelet of braided leather and silver. Sarah recognized it immediately. She had worn it since childhood, one of the few possessions she'd had with her when William delivered her to the human settlement. She had assumed it lost forever when she and Caleb were separated during the border skirmish. You kept it all this time, she asked, surprised. I kept everything of yours, he replied simply, hoping I would find you again. Alexander watched the exchange with unreadable eyes, his posture betraying no emotion. But the bond between him and Sarah pulsed with sudden intensity, A flare of something that might have been jealousy or concern. Caleb held out the bracelet. There's more you should know, Sarah, about your past, about who you truly are. Sarah accepted the bracelet cautiously, her fingers brushing against Caleb's. The moment they touched, a vision flashed through her mind, sharp, sudden, and disorienting. She saw Caleb standing in a darkened chamber, speaking with a shadowy figure whose features she couldn't discern. The words echoed distantly, "Bring her to us before the eclipse. The ritual must not be completed." She pulled back, gasping, the vision fading as quickly as it had appeared. Alexander was instantly alert, moving to her side. "What did you see?" he asked quietly, his hand steadying her elbow. Sarah looked at Caleb with new wariness. "Who sent you?" Really, confusion crossed his face. "My father, the Alpha. He believes you're being manipulated by the Nightshades used as a pawn in their power games." "And what do you believe, Caleb Reed?" William asked, stepping forward. Caleb hesitated, something conflicted, passing behind his eyes. "I believe Sarah deserves to know the whole truth. About the night the Silverstone pack was destroyed. About her parents." He looked directly at Alexander. "About the role your father played in ensuring there would be no witnesses to his crimes." Alexander's expression hardened. "Choose your next words carefully, Bloodclaw. You stand in my hall accusing my father of dishonorable acts." "I speak only truth," Caleb replied evenly, "as verified by one who was there that night." He turned back to Sarah. "We have a survivor of the massacre living among our pack, an elder who escaped the fires. She can tell you what really happened, why the Silverstones were targeted, why your mother was specifically hunted." Sarah's heart pounded. Another survivor. Someone who might have known her mother, her father. The temptation to learn more was nearly overwhelming. "Who is this elder?" William asked, his voice strained. "I was there that night. I saw no other survivors." "Iris Moonfall," Caleb replied. "Once healer to the Silverstone Luna." William's face paled. "Impossible. Iris died in the assault. I saw her fall." "You saw what the chaos of battle allowed you to see," Caleb countered. "Our hunters found her 3 days later, barely alive, wandering the mountain passes. She has lived under our protection ever since, waiting for the prophecy to fulfill itself." He focused on Sarah again. "Waiting for you." The revelation hung in the air, tempting and dangerous. Sarah looked to Alexander, whose expression had grown thoughtful beneath its stern exterior. "This survivor," he said slowly, "what does she claim happened that night? That your father attacked not to prevent a coup, as Shadow Moon history claims, but to stop a ritual designed to break Sebastian's curse once and for all." Caleb's gaze moved between Alexander and Sarah. The Silverstones had discovered the truth that one of dual bloodline could end the curse that had plagued both packs for generations. Your mother was preparing for your birth, gathering the necessary elements for the Eclipse ritual. "And my father learned of this?" Alexander asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Not your father," Caleb replied. "His most trusted advisor. The one who stood to gain the most if the curse continued." All eyes turned to Victor Stone, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. His expression betrayed nothing but a subtle tension had entered his posture. "A convenient accusation," Victor said coldly, "with no proof beyond the word of a conveniently appeared survivor who has lived with the enemy for 25 years. The proof is standing before you," Caleb gestured toward Sarah, "the daughter of Nathaniel Nightshade and Elena Silverstone, the one marked twice, the curse breaker foretold in both our pack's prophecies." Alexander's eyes narrowed. "How do you know of her dual bloodline? That information was revealed to us only hours ago, from a source sealed since the night of the attack." A flicker of hesitation crossed Caleb's face. "Iris has maintained Elena's journals all these years. The knowledge was preserved within our pack, waiting for the right moment." "Lies," William declared firmly. "Elena's journal was unique, written specifically for her daughter, sealed with blood magic that only Sarah could open. No copy exists." His aged eyes held new suspicion. "You're well-informed, young Reed." "Suspiciously so." Tension filled the great hall. Guards shifted subtly, hands moving closer to weapons. Victor's expression remained carefully neutral, though his eyes never left Caleb. Sarah studied the Bloodclaw messenger, reaching out with her newly awakened Silverstone senses. There was truth in his words about her parents, about her dual bloodline. But beneath that truth lay something darker, an agenda. He wasn't revealing a purpose beyond simple rescue or reunion. You said in your note that you would come for me during the new moon, Sarah said carefully. Tonight. Was that merely a message? Or did you expect me to leave with you now? Caleb straightened decision evident in his stance. The offer stands. Come with me to meet Iris. Learn the full truth of your heritage away from those who have every reason to keep you ignorant of your true power. And if I decline, Sarah asked. Something hardened in Caleb's amber eyes. Then you condemn yourself to the same fate as those who came before you. The curse will claim you during the eclipse, as it has claimed every Luna bonded to a Nightshade Alpha. Not this time, Sarah said with quiet conviction. We've found the ritual. My mother's journal has shown us the way to break Sebastian's curse once and for all. Surprise and alarm flashed across Caleb's face before he could mask it. You can't possibly understand what you're dealing with. Sebastian's power has grown too strong. The ritual is dangerous. It could kill you both. A risk we're prepared to take, Alexander interjected, rising from his throne to stand beside Sarah. The united front they presented was not lost on anyone present. Caleb's gaze moved between them, calculation evident. At least allow Iris to assist with the ritual. Her knowledge of Silverstone magic would be invaluable if she were truly Iris Moonfall, William interrupted. But the woman you claim as your elder cannot be who you say. The real Iris would know that Elena's journal was unique, unsealed only by her daughter's blood. A tense silence followed, broken by Victor's measured voice. It seems the Bloodclaw messenger's true purpose becomes clear. Not to rescue, but to prevent. Not to reveal truth, but to create division. Alexander stepped forward, his authority filling the hall. You have delivered your message, Caleb Reed. Now I deliver mine. Sarah Silverstone remains under my protection as mate bond and Luna to be. The ritual to break Sebastian's curse will proceed during the eclipse. You may return to your Alpha with this information. Caleb's expression darkened. You're making a grave mistake, both of you. His eyes lingered on Sarah, a mixture of regret and determination evident. The bond you feel, it's an illusion, a trap designed by Sebastian himself to ensure his next victim comes willingly to the sacrifice. Enough, Alexander commanded. Your safe passage ends at dawn. I suggest you use it wisely. For a moment it seemed Caleb might argue further. Instead he bowed stiffly. When the curse claims her, remember that we offered sanctuary. With a final look at Sarah, he turned and departed, escorted by guards who would see him safely to the border. After the great hall had emptied of all but the core group, Sarah released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He was lying. Not about everything, but about crucial details. Yes, William agreed grimly. The question is why? What purpose does it serve the blood claws to prevent the breaking of a curse that has plagued both our packs for generations? Alexander paced before the throne, energy radiating from him like heat from a flame. Power, he said simply. If Sebastian's curse continues, if it claims another Luna during the eclipse, you would lose yourself to the beast, William finished softly. Become the monster Sebastian intended, incapable of leadership or reason. The blood claws could seize territory while Shadow Moon falls into chaos. Sarah twisted the recovered bracelet between her fingers, something nagging at her awareness. There's more to it than territorial advantage. When I touched Caleb, I saw. She hesitated, trying to make sense of the fragmented vision. Someone else is involved. Someone in shadow directing Caleb's actions. Alexander stopped pacing, his golden eyes intense. Sebastian's influence extends beyond the curse itself. He can manipulate the living, especially those susceptible to darkness. Or those who seek power, William added. My king, we must proceed with extreme caution. The new moon has risen. Sebastian's strength grows with each passing hour until the eclipse. Alexander nodded, decision made. Double the guards tonight. No one enters or leaves the fortress without my direct approval. He turned to Sarah, his expression softening slightly. You should rest. Tomorrow will test us both. As William escorted her back to her chambers, Sarah felt the weight of prophecy and expectation pressing down upon her. The bracelet Caleb had returned seemed to burn against her skin, a connection to a past she barely remembered, and a future hanging in precarious balance. When they reached her door, the old advisor paused, concern etched in his weathered features. Trust your instincts tonight, child. The new moon is when we are most vulnerable to deception, when the goddess's light is hidden and shadows reign. Sarah nodded, clutching Elena's journal to her chest. I'll read more of my mother's words. Perhaps they contain guidance for this darkness before the eclipse. After William had gone, Sarah entered her chamber, securing the door behind her. The room was warm, a fire burning low in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the stone walls. She moved to the window, gazing out at the night sky. No moon was visible, just endless stars scattered across velvet blackness. The new moon, the time of beginnings and endings, of greatest vulnerability and greatest potential. She opened Elena's journal once more, seeking further guidance. As she turned the pages, she noticed writing appearing in the margins, fresh words materializing as if written by an invisible hand. Her mother's voice seemed to whisper from beyond. Sebastian will seek a vessel among the living one who serves him willingly or unwittingly. Look for the one who gains most from keeping the curse alive. Sarah's thoughts immediately turned to Victor Stone. The beta had everything to gain if Alexander lost himself completely to the curse. The power vacuum would make Victor's ascension almost certain. Yet something about that conclusion felt too obvious, too convenient. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Alexander stood at her door, his powerful frame silhouetted against the corridor's torchlight. I needed to be certain you were safe, he said simply. She stepped aside to let him enter, the bond between them humming with heightened awareness as he crossed the threshold. Neither spoke for a long moment, the silence filled with unspoken thoughts. William has begun the preparations, Alexander finally said. The ritual chamber beneath the fortress has been sealed and warded. Only those directly involved will have access. Sarah nodded, still holding the journal. My mother left additional warnings. She believes Sebastian might be working through someone in the pack. Victor, Alexander said, not as a question, but as a grim acknowledgement. Perhaps, but it feels almost too obvious. She hesitated. My mother wrote that Sebastian would seek a vessel among the living, someone who stands to gain from the curse continuing. Alexander moved to the window, staring out at the starlit mountains. Victor has been with me through all three previous bonds. He held me during those dark days after each death. If he served Sebastian, why would he offer comfort rather than pushing me further toward darkness? A chill ran through Sarah. Perhaps to maintain your trust, to ensure you'd never suspect him when the time came. Alexander turned back to her, conflict evident in his features. He's been my shadow since childhood. My closest friend when others feared to approach the Alpha's sun. Which gives him the perfect position to influence you, Sarah pointed out gently, and to sabotage any attempt to break the curse. The weight of potential betrayal settled over Alexander like a physical burden. If you're right, we can trust almost no one. His eyes found hers intense and questioning. Can I trust you, Sarah Silverstone? With my pack's future, with my own soul. She met his gaze unflinchingly. I have as much to lose as you do. More, perhaps. This isn't just about breaking a curse anymore. It's about reclaiming my heritage, understanding who I am. She stepped closer to him, the bond between them pulsing stronger with proximity. I want to live, Alexander, not just survive. Something changed in his expression, a softening, a surrender to what had been growing between them since that first moment in the courtyard. He reached out his fingers, finally deliberately touching the crescent mark at her throat. The contact sent warmth cascading through them both, the bond flaring bright and undeniable. Then we do this together, he said, his voice low and certain. No more holding back, no more fear of what complete bonding might bring. Sarah's heart raced at his words, at their implication. The ritual required complete unity, mind, spirit, and body joined without reservation. She had known this intellectually since reading Elena's journal, but facing the reality of it now, with Alexander standing before her, made the abstract suddenly intensely personal. Together, she echoed, her hand rising to cover his where it rested against her mark. The next morning dawned clear and cold, a pristine sky stretching over the mountain peaks. Sarah woke feeling more rested than she had in years, a new certainty guiding her movements as she prepared for the day ahead. Alexander had left her chamber before dawn, both of them acknowledging that the complete bonding would wait until evening, a sacred act requiring proper preparation. William met her in the library, his arms laden with rare herbs and crystals gathered during the night. He looked exhausted but determined, purpose lending strength to his frail frame. We have much to do before nightfall, he said, gesturing to the materials spread across the table. The ritual preparation requires absolute precision. For hours, they worked together, grinding herbs to exact proportions, charging crystals under precise angles of sunlight, transcribing incantations from Elena's journal onto ritual scrolls. William's knowledge was vast, but he shared it patiently, explaining each step with the care of a teacher who knows his lessons may soon be all that remains of him. "You've spent your whole life preserving this knowledge," Sarah observed as they completed another complex mixture. Waiting for this moment, William's hands stilled, his eyes distant with memory. Not just knowledge, child. Hope. When the Silverstones fell, something precious was lost, not just lives, but a way of seeing the world. Balance. Harmony between power and wisdom. He looked at her with unexpected intensity. Your mother understood this. She knew that strength without compassion becomes tyranny, just as healing without strength becomes victimhood. And you've carried this understanding all these years, Sarah said softly, when it would have been easier to forget. The easy path rarely leads where we need to go. William smiled faintly. I was not always this wise, you know. In my youth, I was as hungry for glory as any warrior. It took decades to understand that true legacy isn't measured in battles won or enemies vanquished, but in what endures after we're gone. His words settled in Sarah's heart, resonating with something she'd always felt but never fully understood. William had preserved more than just facts and rituals. He had maintained a philosophy, a way of being, that might otherwise have vanished from the world. As the sun began its descent, Lord Thorn joined them, his weathered face solemn as William instructed him in the ritual witness's role. The old warrior absorbed the complex incantations with surprising speed, his memory proving as formidable as William had claimed. The witness stands between worlds, William explained, neither fully in the ritual nor entirely outside it. You will feel Sebastian's resistance, his attempt to maintain the curse. You must hold firm no matter what visions or pain he sends. Thorn nodded gravely. I've faced death before. I do not fear it now. Fear is not the enemy, William countered. Doubt is. When the moment comes, you must believe in the ritual's power more than you believe in Sebastian's. Alexander arrived as twilight deepened, shadows stretching across the fortress grounds. His expression was calm but resolute, the authority of the Alpha evident in every movement. He had spent the day securing the fortress, personally inspecting each guard post, each entrance. Victor had been conspicuously absent, claiming border patrol duties that would keep him away until morning. Everything is prepared in the ritual chamber, Alexander announced. We should proceed before full darkness. The small group made their way through the fortress, following ancient stone steps that spiraled deep beneath the mountain. Few knew of this underground chamber, built by the first Nightshade Alpha, as a place to commune with the moon goddess when her face was hidden from the world above. The chamber itself was circular, its walls carved directly from the mountain's heart. Crystals embedded in the stone glowed with soft blue light, illuminating the space without flame. In the center, the ritual circle had been inscribed exactly as Elena's journal described. Concentric rings of silver and obsidian marked with symbols older than written language. Sarah felt power humming in the air, ancient and patient. This place had waited centuries for this moment. For her. William moved methodically around the circle, placing charged crystals at precise points, pouring mixtures of herbs and oils along specific lines. Lord Thorn took his position at the northern point, ceremonial staff in hand, lips silently rehearsing the incantations William had taught him. When the eclipse reaches totality, William instructed, you must both be in wolf form at the center of the circle. Your blood will be mingled on the altar stone here. He indicated a small white stone pedestal at the exact center. The witness will recite the binding words as Sebastian's spirit manifests. And then, Alexander asked. William's expression grew grave. Then you face him together, united through the bond. Sarah's dual bloodline provides the key, the bridge between what was sundered long ago. The old advisor stepped back, surveying their preparations one final time. Satisfied, he turned to Sarah and Alexander with unexpected emotion in his aged eyes. I have waited a lifetime for this moment, he said quietly. To see the cycle of vengeance broken, to witness healing where there has only been harm. His voice grew stronger. Whatever happens tonight, know that you have already succeeded in one thing. You have chosen unity over division, love over fear. That alone makes these years of waiting worthwhile. Sarah felt tears threaten at the old wolf's words. She impulsively embraced him, this man who had saved her as an infant, who had preserved her heritage when all else was lost. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." William seemed startled by the gesture, then returned it with surprising strength. "It has been my honor, child. Now prepare yourselves. The eclipse begins in 1 hour." As William and Thorne withdrew to the chamber's edge to complete the final preparations, Alexander took Sarah's hands in his. The mate bond pulsed between them, stronger than ever, yet still incomplete. "Are you ready?" he asked, his golden eyes searching hers. Sarah nodded, feeling certainty replace fear. "I've been preparing for this my entire life, even when I didn't know it."